Welcome to Creative Careers Institute photography class on image manipulation. Boy, is that a broad topic. It ranges all the way from an amateur with a cell phone who uses Instagram to add a filter and share some images with a friend, or all the way up to people who are professionals who shoot in RAW and they have all this data, and maybe like someone like the genius Trey Ratcliffe, you're using high dynamic range photography to be able to really enhance those images and make them look much more vivid than they ever could in real life. In this session, we're going to look at all of the different options you have to change your images. Whether it's color correction, it's retouching, maybe you want to use special filters to make things look a particular way, or maybe you just want to crop them to see how you can make them look more dramatic or get rid of distracting elements. We're going to be looking at programs like Photoshop. We'll dabble a bit in Lightroom. We'll look at Photomatics for HDR, high dynamic range photographs, also Topaz Adjust. We'll also look at Portrait Professional, which is a great additional program, a standalone program that you can use to tweak and retouch portraits of people. To demonstrate some of the options available, here's a situation where my husband and I went out to dinner at my sister's house. And I took my trusty camera along. I didn't get very many photos, but I wanted to post one of them to Facebook thanking her for the great dinner that she made us. Some of the shots weren't too appropriate, but I did find one, and it was of her two favorite little salt and pepper shakers, two little doggies. And I had a vision in mind of starting with this sort of image and ending up with this sort of image, but the challenge was to get from here to there. The first thing that I needed to do was do some color correction, so I opened up the Curves tool, and I used that to brighten the image a bit. Next, I picked the crop tool and came in a little bit closer on those two little doggy salt and pepper shakers. I noticed then that I had some brownie crumbs in front of the two, so I used the clone stamp tool to be able to sample some of the color next to those little crumbs and then cover them up. And then I used the type tool to be able to add my own personal thank you, put a little bit of a glow around the type, moved it around a bit, and ended up with an image that I was happy with. These are the kinds of things that you can do in a program like Photoshop, and once you're skilled with it, you can do it fairly rapidly, but at first it takes quite a bit of time. Anybody who's used Photoshop for a while is very aware, I think, of the look that's created by all of these standard filters. The blur tool, Gaussian blur, was very popular on type for a long time in order to give a sort of shadowy look to it. And there's motion blur and lens blur. You can distort the image. You're going to see later that I have twirled poor Kropotkin and made her look not too cute, quite honestly. The noise tool is handy in particular, I think, for the dust and scratches one option where you can make it look like an old-timey image. Pixelate is kind of fun. You can be make it look like a Seurat painting, and you can pointillize, or you can turn it into a mosaic. You can render the image with some clouds. You can add lens flare and various lighting effects. I'll show you how some of those looked with Kropotkin a bit later. Let's go up to oil paint. Oil paint is one of my favorite. Yay! Look what they've done to Kropotkin. I have all of these sliders over here on the right-hand side that allow me to change the look of this stylized kind of oil painting look. This is the stylization one. This is cleanliness. Kind of like it a little blurry, maybe a little bit. I'm beginning to think that Van Gogh probably invented this tool. Don't you think, maybe? A little bit of a Van Gogh look to these paintings. You can change the direction. You can change the shine. Often it's combined, oil paint with liquify, because I could go back in, for example, and I could tweak the little guy's whiskers over here and pull them out and make them look and stand out a bit more. If I get the image looking the way I want it to, all I have to do is hit OK, and there I am, and then I have my various options to save this. I think Photoshop CS6 is a marvelous tool. It's really a powerful one. I've only shown you a few of the features. I think I could spend the rest of my life learning about what good old Photoshop will do for us. Photoshop filters are amazing fun. Here's my cat Kropotkin, and the first filter, of course, is that oil paint that's available in CS6. The next one is a lens correction filter that offers a chance to vignette. That means putting, in this case, darkened edges around the edge of the image. Or you can use the filter called lens flare that adds those kind of artifacts as if you were looking through the lens into the sun. Extrude is a bit extreme, as is solarize, but maybe the most over the top is twirl. But that sort of sets us up to use a tool that's really quite valuable, and that's one called the Art History Brush. I love that tool. It's just great. Let me show you. I'm going to open up here a recent image, and it is this house near where I live that is just gorgeous. Now, obviously, what I did was I added a bunch of other filters we're going to discuss in another part of this video. But one of the fun things you can do with the History Brush is go up here to Image, go to Adjustments, and turn it into a black and white. Now that seems like I'm going through a lot of trouble to turn it into black and white after already making it such beautiful colors. But I can add the colors back by using the History Brush, but I can pick the areas where I want it to be. So let me go over here to History Brush tool, click on it, and now I can pick the areas I want to bring the color back. Isn't that cool? Look at that. Maybe I want to do just that. Nah, I'll go a little further. Here we go. Maybe I want to bring this back. Now, one of the challenges is I'm using a fairly large brush here. In order to be able to do large swaths of color easily, you'd want to switch to a smaller brush tool when you're going around the precise edges so that you don't end up with blurry edges. But you see the idea here? I could go through this whole picture and add back only the parts I wanted. Whoops, I kind of went over to the other area there. But I'm busy adding all of this. Now, of course, I can go up here again, edit, step backward, edit, step backward. And so when I make a mistake, I can go back and undo it without having to undo everything on the image. That's one of the reasons that I recommend stopping fairly often, clicking, unclicking, clicking, unclicking. You have to hold the mouse button down on a PC in order to be able to have the brush function. So stop fairly often, because one of the mistakes I often make is that I go all over an image and then make a mistake early on and I've got to undo too much. So, you know, stop fairly frequently. But isn't that fun? It's a wonderful thing you can use to restore portions of a picture that are underneath, so that you can add that back. There's a function that's quite similar in Lightroom, Adobe's Lightroom. This is Adobe's Lightroom 4, Adobe's other photo manipulation and photo collection program. I don't know why they didn't put them all into one, but they didn't, so here you are. This program is really good for being able to organize your photographs into different catalogs and collections and keep them straight over time. Tag them properly so you can always find them. They have all sorts of other wonderful ways, as you can see, where you can have different views, you can see single images, you can compare images so that you can decide which one is better than the other when you're looking to make some changes, so that it can be very helpful. You can also make changes to how the images look. There are presets as well that you can use, but you can also go over here and you can see that, for example, on tone control, I can click on exposure. I can start making differences in that. Whoops, a bit too much. Don't want to adjust it that much. Do I want to play with contrast a bit? Would it look better if I made it a bit contrastier? What about changing the highlights? How would that look? I'll load some of those filters. Change the shadows. You can use this program in a variety of different ways, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it because Julianne Cost of Adobe has done a remarkable series of YouTube videos that are available that shows you everything about how to enhance your photos in this program, easily add vignettes and other nice techniques that really look good. And just as we use that history brush in Photoshop to desaturate all the color first into a black and white and then paint some of it back, you can do similar things here with adjustment tools. There's a variety of different tools available in Lightroom. Again, Lightroom and Photoshop are the high-end programs from Adobe, Photoshop being the sort of granddaddy of them all. But these are opportunities to really make a difference in your images and make them look different. There's no program that allows you to do photo retouching better than Photoshop, but you know, there are times where I need a down and dirty program that doesn't have a steep learning curve, where I can make good-looking portraits on the fly. And boy, Portrait Professional is one of those programs. I bought the standard edition number 10. It's now up to number 11, but watch what happens. I'm going to open an image here. Let's see. I have an image of me from back when I was younger with my, it's called Bonnie Blueflower for a reason, as you can tell. So first thing that the program asks you to do after you open the image is select the gender. There's also a checkbox here in case you're dealing with a child because the facial proportions are different. but I'll hit female. It tells you what to do. It says click on the left corner of the left eye. It gives you those instructions with the little X as well, with the little crosshairs. Right corner of right eye, tip of the nose, left part of the mouth, right part of the mouth. And now it tells you to adjust the outlines. And you can either use your space bar after you're done, or there's a little click box at the upper right that you can use. I'll do these a little bit down and dirty so they're not perfect. In fact, the program's pretty good at adjusting for things. Let me go there. Now I'll do next or space bar. Adjust my eyebrow over here. Change this one to match. Did a pretty good job of capturing. It takes a look for the parts of the photo and comes as close as it can. Let me move this a little bit in here, a little bit in here. We should be all set. Now they want to know if it's mouth open or mouth closed. Obviously it's mouth open. The mouth part, I think, is the part that the program has the most difficulty with in terms of the final rendering. Sometimes the teeth don't look quite right, and I do take some of the portraits back into Photoshop because it does make them look better. You do want to make sure you just get the lips in here. Bring this up here. That's pretty good. My nose is a bit off. We're going to want to move this. And so you use the portrait at the right over here as your guide. It's your reference image. It shows you how to position these outlines if you have any questions. And as soon as you're done with that, you hit next, spacebar. It asks you also to adjust the shape of your face. I haven't found a program yet that gets rid of my little double chin. Well, not so little. Oh, what are you going to do? But here I've got kind of a broad face, so we'll move that out there. Once you get all of these outlines just the way you want them, and you can tweak them forever, it will enhance your photograph. And this is what I think is so remarkable. This is the wonderful, amazing wrinkle reduction program. Look at how it gets rid of all the uneven color on your face, gets rid of those fine line wrinkles. It makes you look all glossy and pretty. I think it's a great thing. Notice you've got sliders over here to the right. You can use all kinds of sliders, eye controls. It'll wonderfully documented program, gives you all sorts of information. The face sculpt controls, the skin controls, the eye controls. My favorite are the touch-up brush at the top here, and it shows you how to use it, and it shows you how to change the strength and all the things you can adjust on this tool to do touch-up on the little things on your face, and the restore brush. This is where you'd like to restore the original detail. Maybe there's something underneath that you think that got masked over that you think would look better. There again, that's why I often do that with the teeth. But isn't that cool? I think it's just a great little program, and it's not too expensive. At the other end of the cost spectrum are cell phone apps. If you visit our website, creativecareersinstitute.com, in this lesson you'll see a link to an article in Wired magazine where they identify 10 great apps that you can use for photo manipulation on your iPhone. I also have some personal favorites for the Droid. My current favorite is Paper Camera. It's where you take a normal image and then you manipulate it so that it looks like either a line drawing or some sort of colored contours. Cell phones are getting into the HDR game. HDR is high dynamic range photography. It's the kind of photography where you take multiple images, sandwich them together, and then apply filters. In a previous lesson on the built environment, we looked at Pro HDR, which is an app for the Droid, which worked out quite well in terms of taking pictures, as you can see, of the Broad Museum here on the campus of Michigan State University. At the other end of the spectrum, however, you can do some marvelous things with HDR photography with megapixel cameras and HDSLRs that are difficult, if not impossible, to do with a cell phone. The images included at the beginning of this class are from my personal collection. Obviously, all of them have oil paint on them, but they're also HDR images that I've taken with my Canon Mark II 5D, a remarkable camera that makes HDR photography a breeze. Photoshop CS6 has a pretty good HDR function, high dynamic range. Here's how you use it. You go up here to File, click on that, go down here to Automate, and it'll say Merged HDR Pro. So you click on that. What you're going to do here is browse to find the files on your hard drive. I'm going to go down here, and I know which 3 of the images I would like. I have a Canon that shoots 3 images at a time, so I'm going to click on these 3 images. Whoops. Let me go back up here. Click. 1, 2, 3. Those are the 3 images that were shot normal, dark, light. Some cameras shoot 5 or more images that they then composite together. The goal is to be able to use the information in the dark version and in the light version to add the detail into the shadows and the highlights. So we're going to open those 3, click OK. So there's our merged version. It took the light, the dark, and the in-between and made one image out of them. Now, there's a separate program that many of us like that's also useful. It's called Photomatix, and we're going to do the same thing in Photomatix. I'm going to look for those same 3 images, 20, 21, and 22. I know. We load them in again, and then we hit the defaults. I'm not going to make any major corrections here. It'll load the source images. Notice that it's aligning them. It's trying to look to see if there are minute differences. Anytime you're doing HDR, you should do it with a tripod because you need all 3 images to be virtually identical. Now, one of the nice things about this program is that you see that it has all sorts of sort of automatic adjustments, opportunities. One's called grunge that you might like. Another one is called deep. I kind of like deep. Adjusted. Intensive. For different pictures, things look much better in one or the other. Painterly is usually a pretty one, but it doesn't happen to look particularly good with this image, so I don't know quite why that is, but it looks good on other images. So it has some presets already that you can use for different kinds of other corrections that go on top. I had to go back to an earlier version of Photoshop, this is CS4, to show you Topaz Adjust 4, which is a plugin, filter plugin that you can use in Photoshop. Let's go to File. I'm going to open up a recent image that's kind of blah. It's kind of cool because I got up close to some Canadian geese out in a field at Michigan State, and there's a nice tree there. The clouds have some spark to them, but not a whole bunch. But now if I go up to Filter, and I go to Topaz Labs, and I use Topaz Adjust 4, it'll bring up the plugin that I can use to change this photo dramatically. Here's the plugin. Here are the filters. There's my image. I'm going to make it maybe a little bit larger so you can see a little bit more of the changes that it's going to make. Notice there are a lot of presets on the left-hand side, and I can do a lot of things. I can look at the preview window up here, but I'm just going to go ahead and click on a few that I frequently use. Spicify is nice. You see how it adds some really blacks and hard edges so that you can see the detail in the photo more explicitly. You can see those birds in there amongst the corn stubble. Here's one called Vibrance. It's a little bit more subtle. Psychedelic is not so subtle. Color Blast, that gives you awfully saturated colors. Let's go for Dramatic, see what Dramatic looks like. Dramatic has a nice feel to it. Depending on the kind of image that you're using, whether it's a portrait or a scenic or architectural buildings in an urban area, it can make a big difference. You can have your own presets as well. You can change all of yours. You can use the sliders on the right to be able to adjust and then create your own presets, which you can save. So the next time you come back, if you really like one, you can go back and reuse it. Notice that there are some here that are perfect for HDR. This is HDR Sketch and HDR Pop. Many people use this Topaz Adjust 4 along with a program like Photomatix or the HDR settings in Photoshop to be able to do HDR photography nowadays and really make it pop. Venice is kind of nice. Dark charcoal sketch, that's dramatic. Pencil. You could spend all day playing with these and deciding which ones you like and which ones you don't. You can export the images as you go, save them, and take them into other programs. In closing, I'd like to look at a few of the favorite images of Thomas Hawk. I find him a fascinating character. You'll see a link back at our class for this week where we take you to an At Google talk that he gave. Hawk is not a professional photographer, though he makes a substantial sideline income selling his images. He has a full-time career, but he travels a lot, and he makes it his goal to shoot photographs every single day. All of them, he says, are processed before he posts. So what that means is that sometimes it's a simple crop. It might be a little color correction, or it might be something much more exotic, but he handles each image before he lets others see it, and he's currently running about 2 years behind. I think the key to being a successful photographer, no matter what your particular bent, whether it's portrait photography, street photography, the built environment, nature, manipulating images afterwards, it's that consistency. Malcolm Gladwell says that to become an expert at anything, you need to put in 20 hours a week over 10 years. And I do think in the case of photography, maybe that's only half as much time as we need.